Hello and welcome to part 2 of our analysis of iCAT10. As we explained earlier in part 1, iCAT10 is now entering into the last lap of CAT preparation. We've released 15 mocks already from iCAT 25 to 11, 10 to 1 are the last 10 mocks. So by now you should have a fairly good idea of your strategy to crack CAT. In the first part we saw how iCAT10 was a fairly easy mock with an average LOD of 1.65 per question. As we've always explained, the LOD is nothing but the average difficulty per question, where a difficulty of 1 indicates an easy question, a difficulty of 3 indicates a tough question. So this is the average difficulty for each question on a pure arithmetic mean basis. This does not mean that all questions had this difficulty level. We saw that the verbal section was among the easiest of all the mocks released so far, with a difficulty level of hardly 1.2. In this part of the analysis, we'll have a look at the toughest section of CAT as well as of this mock, that is DILR. So here, as we can see, DILR had an average difficulty level of 2.16 and hence was classified as a moderate, or you can say marginally moderate to tough section. Now, generally in the exam, DILR has a difficulty level somewhere around 2.2 to 2.25. So on the whole, you can say that it was more or less at par with what you could expect in CAT, with it being slightly simpler considering that this was supposed to be an easy mock. The number of good attempts in DILR have been mentioned as 18, but we'll come to that a little later. So before we go into good attempts, first, let's understand how DILR is to be analyzed. For verbal and RC specifically, we saw that we have a look at the subject matter area, which is again important for DI as well. We have a look at the average LOD, again similar. We also have a look at word length, which is not applicable here. Lastly, we have a look at the number of questions. On the contrary, in DILR, you know that there are always 8 sets with 4 questions each, thereby contributing to 32 questions. So typically the benchmark figure for any average mock in DILR is somewhere around 4 sets or 16 questions. If the mock is easier, you can always go to 19 or 20 questions, that is the 5th set. If the mock is simpler, you can even clear the cutoff at somewhere around 12 to 13 questions. That's 3 full sets and maybe some other attempts. On the whole, if we were to summarize, we would say that anywhere between 3 to 5 sets is what you should be realistically looking in a DILR section, with 4 being more like your benchmark. So the objective of a DILR section or analysis of the DILR section is to really identify the top 4 sets that you should have been trying in that particular mock. So now let's start with that objective. So just as we looked at the graph for RC, we'll also have a look at this graph for DILR. You can see we've listed down these 8 sets based on their subject matter, also based on whether they were mixed, as in there were few MCQ questions and few theta or numerical entry questions, or whether they were purely MCQ or purely any. Now here, note that the section LOD was 2.16. There are 3 sets, 1 right at the beginning and 2 right at the end, where the difficulty level is significantly higher compared to the sectional difficulty. Also, when I look at a 2.75, as I'll show you below, this implies that more or less each question in this set was towards the tougher side. So when I consider a mock like this and I have 3 sets which are tending towards tough, I would try and say that all 3 of them should have been skipped. Because if you see, there is a huge valley when I look at this figure between these 3 sets. So also the purpose of this graph is to show you the trend or the pattern in which the sets were arranged in the mock, thereby helping you to identify which ones you should have done and which ones you should have skipped. So you should have a look at this once you've taken the mock and compare your attempts with this and see whether you actually did the easier ones or the tough ones. So here as you can see the ones that we skipped. The first one was a bar graph on average age. Required a lot of interpretation of this graph. Had you done this, this could have been solved pretty easily. In the exam scenario, especially considering these 5 sets here, I would not have attempted this. However, this was a very good set to be solved at home from a purely conceptual understanding and practice point of view. Similarly, the last two were both caselets. One was more like a time and work question with the number of man hours being given. Again, in the exam scenario, time consuming to do, and because there is an application of time and work, a lot of people find it tough. So I would not have done it in an exam scenario. Both were good sets to solve again in a home scenario when you are practicing without any time limitations. So which were the sets that should have been attempted? The easiest and most conventional set here, as I'll show you sometime later, was the set on linear arrangement where you had 3 rows and you just had to arrange the objects of people in these rows. An absolutely MHCET type question which could have been solved very, very quickly and very easily. So this was definitely something that should have been tried. Also note that this was a pure MCQ, which means for each of the questions you could have taken some amount of help from the options itself and also tried to validate your answer. The next question that I would have done in this mock was this one. Even though there is a set that is officially marked to be simpler, I would have solved this question, which was a 7 by 5 matrix, and it was purely application of matrix where you took the clues, started filling a table and getting the answer. So again, this was something that I would have definitely tried in the exam. Another factor, MCQ 7 by 5, so it might have taken 15-17 minutes, but combined these two questions would have given me those 8 attempts that are very crucial to going towards the cutoff. The next 2 sets that could have been attempted were these two. Now note that I am actually selecting sets which are rated marginally tougher than the 3 set Venn. And when I show you the set, I'll tell you why. So here there was this set on 4 students and their marks in an iCAT. Again, this was something where if you filled the table correctly initially, you could have got all the answers. There was another set which was a combination of a caselet and a figure where you had 25 suites in a hotel and you needed to map the path of the waiters. With a little bit of understanding, again this was a fairly doable set. Now why did I keep this for last? As a student, I would have attempted this because the common data of this set was easy. This was a standard 3 set Venn where most of the Venn could be filled pretty easily from the data. However, each question in this Venn was a maxima minima kind of a question. So maximum number of students doing this, minimum number of students doing that, and so on. So a lot of people, because Venn is a very, very conceptual area, a lot of people find Venn diagrams to be a slightly tricky area where they go wrong in terms of their answers and lose marks. That is why I would have kept it as a 5th priority and then attempted questions in that set. Before I go to the sets, let me just show you the same graph that we also saw for verbal, where we look at the difficulty level for each question. So compared to verbal and quant, this graph is not as important here, but it still gives you some important pointers. For instance, when I look at this set on linear arrangement in 3 rows, observe clearly that the trend is that it's a 2-1-1. What does this mean? That the first question has been marked as moderate because you might take say 10-12 minutes to solve and arrive at the arrangement. But once you've done this, then everything else here is absolutely easy. And such kind of questions mean that you invest time in solving this, you can solve everything else. That is where, for me, this would be an absolute cakewalk. On the other hand, if I observe, the 7 by 5 matrix has moderate difficulty mapped for each question, but there's no difficult question as such. So when I show you the question, you'll observe that if I do this, I'll be able to solve all 4 questions one after the other. Again, important question to be solved. If I look, the same logic also applies to the set on numerical logic. the 25 sweets one. So doable. Consider these two. Observe that the 3 set when actually has easier questions compared to the single table one on students. But as I said, a lot of students find maxima minima to be slightly on the tougher side. That is precisely why we do not recommend that you do it as one of the earlier options. You could have solved 4 other sets first and then gone to this. Conversely, as we've been mentioning, these 3 sets had 3 tough questions and 1 moderate question each, which meant that you needed to invest a lot of time and effort in trying to crack these sets, and that is exactly the reason why I would have not tried these in the exam scenario. So if somebody were to ask me which are the sets that I would have attempted, as I said, of course this can be done interchangeably because I personally prefer matrix first, but the linear arrangement of 3 rows, all 4 questions, the 7x5 matrix, then the single table on 4 students, then the numerical logic set on 25 sweets, and finally the 3 set when even if you did 2-3 questions, you clearly had a chance to reach 18 to 19 attempts. So if someone were to ask me the number of good attempts as far as this mock is concerned, I would say anywhere close to 18 to 19 attempts would be a reasonably good performance. Let's have a look at some of the questions first. So let me show you the ones that I would have attempted first. See, when I look at this, this is a classic matrix that you practice when you start practicing matrix. So you have names of people. There are 7 people. So you have their names, you have their professions, you have the genre of music that they like, you have the mobile brand that they like, and you have the car that they like. So 5 things and 7 people, and then you have these conditions. So just create this table for 5 columns and 7 rows and start filling the data. You'll definitely get the answer. The only reason why all the questions have been marked as moderate instead of, let's say, easy is that each question here has an if condition. So this should give you a hint that this table is not going to get filled completely. So very often what happens is that in matrix questions, when the table does not get filled completely, we think that we've missed something. However, you by noticing this, you will realize that certain things definitely are not going to get filled here. For instance, you know that Firoz, in the table you will not be able to map Firoz to an LG phone. Then other things will fall into place. The other reason why it's called moderate is that all 3 questions which are conditional also have this option called data insufficient. So there is a little bit of a doubt as to which of these is actually the correct answer. However, if you do it meticulously, spend those 15-17 minutes, you will definitely get all the questions right, and this will be a full marks based question for you. Let's have a look at the other set which we said was a must do, which was the one on linear arrangement. So this was that set. So there are 12 products, there are 12 products kept on display here. The counters accommodate 4 products stacked in a row, so there are 3 rows. So essentially you have an arrangement which is of this type. And then you need to fill all of these. So you spend these 10 minutes or so and you'll definitely get the answer. The other thing that I would do in this question is I would look at question 51 as well as question 54 first. Now why do I say that? I say that because here when we say which product is stacked to the immediate right of beans, I do not have a cannot be determined. There are 4 very, very discrete answers. Similarly, which is to the left of biscuits, again 4 discrete answers. So here it is very clear that it becomes, if you do not get one of these, you know that you've gone wrong. However, if you have done your arrangement correctly, you will get these 2 answers right up front. Then these 2 can be answered. But if you're focusing on these 2, there is always this aspect of cannot be determined. But again, this was definitely a set that should have been tried in the exam. Let's look at some of the other sets. So yeah, when we said the set in Venn diagrams, this is a very typical short set on Venn. 100 people in an office, 3 modes of transport. So you have 50, so you have basically walk, bus, train. So you have this. You start filling in some of these data given here. So some things have been given in terms of ratios. The number of people who like to walk only to reach office is at least 1. So this is greater than equal to 1. Similarly, you start filling everything. Here the problem is you have minimum number of people who do not like to do this, or maximum number of people who like to take the train only. Number of people who take the bus only is less than number of people who like to take the train only. So every time there is some condition that needs to be applied here. Since a lot of people find this aspect tough, that is the reason we said attempt it as your last option. Whereas when I consider the set on the table, which is this set right above this, we say there are 4 students and this table shows their marks in 3 iCATs. The pet name of these students is Ina, Mina, Dika, Chika. So one mapping will be name to pet name. That is something you will need to find. Then there is some other clue which says 25 questions, 3 marks for right answer, 1 for wrong. So each of these combinations will correspond to that. Leander scored the lowest marks in iCAT10 and Mahesh scored the highest in iCAT2 among the 4 students. So for instance, if this is Leander, then Mahesh has to get more than 62 here because Meena cannot be both Leander and Mahesh. Similarly, Ina's total score is a multiple of 7. Now for instance here, this person is a score of 110 and 28, which is 138. Is 138 divisible by 7? No. So this cannot be, Ina's total score is a multiple of 7. So this is already given here. So then you need to have some value here, which is a multiple of 7. Accordingly, map that. Rohan's total score less than Prakash. Leander's total score more than Prakash. So start filling in those clues. You'll have to do a little bit of permutations here, but you will arrive at the values for all. Here it is again crucial to look at the questions. How many different total scores are possible for Rohan? Who is Meena? Different possible scores for Ina. And how many marks can Leander get in iCAT2 if his total score is also a multiple of 3? So here all these questions involve some amount of cases to be done, but this is still a fairly doable question as far as the exam is concerned. If I look at the 4th question that we recommended, which was this one, we say that the Grand Marina, so it's a figure here with 4 entrances given. The Grand Marina has 25 suites, they are numbered as shown. There are 4 room service boys entering this assembly from 4 points, and they have to follow a certain set of strategies. So here there are simply rules. If they enter a room whose number is a perfect square, they will take a left turn if available to enter the next room. Otherwise, they will take a right turn. So if this guy enters here, this is a perfect square, so he will go here. If they enter a room which is prime, they take a right turn if available, else they take a left turn. So if this is prime, so he'll go here. This is a square, so he'll go left. If they enter a room whose number is neither a perfect square nor prime, then they go straight. Otherwise, they'll take the left if the number is odd, or right if the number is even. Time taken for any service boy who has just entered a room to just enter the adjoining room following strategy 1, 2 or 3 is 2, 3, 4 minutes respectively. So you will have to map the path of each boy in each case. So here when you see what is the total number of rooms in which A and C have entered individually after half an hour. So here rooms that are repeated have to be counted separately, and then you map the path of A for half an hour. So you know these values, you start mapping it down and you will get your answer. Which of the following is true? B will take 33 minutes to do this, D will take 35 minutes and so on. So when you map the entire path for each of these boys, you will be able to answer all 4 questions. This is again a question which would have taken time. It might have taken some 15-17 minutes, but had you done it meticulously, you would have definitely got your answer. So on the whole, if we were to summarize this section again, we would say that it was a moderately difficult section. Here, the clear distinction was between 3 difficult sets which were to be skipped, which were again placed towards the start and end of the mock, and 5 easy to moderate sets which were to be attempted. Of these, the set on Venn diagrams could be tried last if you were not comfortable with maxima minima. However, if you were comfortable, it could definitely have been done earlier. It was definitely possible to do anywhere between 4.5 to 5 sets in the given time as far as this mock is concerned. So the number of good attempts for this section here would be anywhere between 18 to 19. In part 3 of our analysis, we will finally discuss the quant section. The analysis for the earlier mocks as well as for the verbal section is available on our official YouTube channel given in the link here. You can subscribe to the channel by clicking on this link. Also, if you hit the bell button, you get notifications every time a new video is put up. Feel free to put in your comments, views, questions, etc. on the thread below the video. Keep watching. Thank you and wish you all the very best.